Hello Lockdown Diaries, day 37. Missed yesterday. I'm sleeping a little bit. I think fatigue of lockdown has set in a little bit here. I've got to be honest, it's cold and bleak at the minute, but let's keep fingers crossed for a spring opening. Today I just wanted to do the video on Iceland that I've been talking about for a while now. Just to go through some of the basics for anyone thinking of riding to Iceland or riding around Iceland. The trip I did was in 2017. It was on a R1200 GS. It was a bike that I bought as an ex-off-road school training bike and had fitted out with some alt-rider crash protection, some metal mule panniers. For this trip I fitted it with some Michelin Anarchy Wilds. It was a story I was doing for Bennett's Bike Social, so I was paid by them to do it, which cloud maybe, take that with a pinch, so take what I say with a pinch of salt, I guess, to some extent. Same with the tyres, Michelin sponsored the tyres. So I was very fortunate in that regard, and there's a lot of information that I wrote at the time up on Bennett's Bike Social website if you want to go through any of this in more detail. But essentially with Iceland you're faced with two options of getting your own bike there. The first is to ride up to Denmark to the port town of Hirtshals and sail on the 2.5 day ferry that takes you to the east side of Iceland. I'm just trying to remember the name of the ferry company, but it's just just on the tip of my tongue. So that's 2.5 days ferry. It's about £800 return. It can drop you off at Faroe Islands on the way, so you can have a few days in Faroe Islands before getting on the next ferry, because one sails every sort of 4 days or so. So they do it as part of a deal where you can get off at Faroe Islands 3 days and then get on the next ferry passing. I didn't do that. I just went straight out to Iceland and spent 3 weeks riding around. Now, just to get up to Denmark is 1,000 miles straight up the motorway as I took it. So from door to door from England to Hirtshals was 1,000 miles. That took 2 days plus the 2.5 days on the ferry. You've got 5 days to get there on your own bike, and then on the way back, 5 days back. So you've got to factor that in with that option. All in all, that option costs, say, £1,200 to get there and back, £800 for the ferry, which includes a bit of a bed in a cabin, a little bit more if you want your own cabin, or less if you're happy to share with others, and then say £400 for the fuel and the accommodation on the journey up to Denmark. The alternative is to ship your bike into Reykjavik, which is down here, and you would do that by using either Imskip or Samskip, which are ferry operators or cargo operators, sorry, that do the route to Iceland. You would drop your bike off at the depot in Immingham on the east coast of England, and then they would container it and it would sail out to Reykjavik and you would fly in and meet it. That would obviously save you the 5 days at either side to get there. Obviously you would have to lose a day dropping the bike off in Immingham and picking it up, but having done the route riding up to Denmark and ferry across, I think if I was going again I would do that option. Price wise it's about the same, about £1,200, as it's €1,000 for the bike cargo, and then you've got your own flight into Reykjavik. So all in all, £1,200 whether you go on the ferry into the east or whether you take the cargo boat or the bike goes on the cargo boat into Reykjavik. There is option obviously to rent bikes. There aren't many places in Reykjavik that do it, and it's very expensive, which puts me off. And also a rental bike won't allow you to travel on the F roads, and the F roads are the gravel dirt roads, which are, I guess, iconic in the imagery of Iceland. A rental bike won't allow you to go on those roads. They stipulate that you don't take it on those roads, other than if you go on an organised tour. I mean, BMW do an organised Iceland tour. I mean, the cost of it is kind of eye-watering. If you've got the money, then obviously no problem, but it makes it a very expensive trip if you go with an organised tour that takes you on rental bikes on the F-roads. All in all, for a three-week trip around Iceland on the GS, I'd say about £2,500 is where my budget was. That was the £1,200 for getting there, and then I budgeted around £50 a day whilst I was there. That was camping, so £10 for camping. Fuel around 10 or 15 euros, or maybe 20 euros if I was doing a bit more miles. and then food and fuel, food and drink and things like that, maybe another £20. So £50 a day is what I lived on. It gets very expensive if you want proper accommodation. You know, that's the difference. Iceland is expensive if you want to eat out every night, drink beer and stay in a hotel. Then you're going to need £200, £300 a day. You know, if you're prepared to camp, cook your own food and stay in a tent, £50 a day. So there's a huge discrepancy on how you decide to travel Iceland, really. And obviously I would never have been able to afford to do it as a hotel adventure. It is an expensive island. It's very much designated now for tourism. It feels like the island exists, certainly during the summer, solely for the purpose of tourism. The natural levels of population are 300,000 Icelandic civilians. In the summer or throughout the year, they get 3 million visitors. So a multiple of 10 visitors to each local throughout the year, which is a huge volume. And I think certainly this Route 1, which is the main route around the island, which is all tarmac, that's where you feel this sort of circuit of tourism. Certainly in the Golden Triangle down in the south, or Golden Circle down in the southwest, where Reykjavik and the geyser and those big iconic sites are, very busy. Lots of tourist coaches, lots of people on day trips out from Reykjavik, and it sort of starts to thin out the further around the Route 1 you go. A lot of people do seem now to fly into Reykjavik, hire a car, which, to be honest, you know, if you're not so passionate about taking a bike there, is a much easier way of doing it. You know, just flying in, renting a car. And then a lot of people seem to just drive around. 850 miles it is around. So, you know, 3 or 4 days, 5 days, thereabouts to do the lap. Enough towns along the way. It is very barren, though, and I think that's maybe what I both enjoyed but also disliked about Iceland. Yes, it's very scenic simply because it's empty and desolate and wild. But at the same time, when it's cold and wet and windy, you really just hanker after a nice cafe or a restaurant or something to get you off the road and in. But when you go around here, there's absolutely nothing, you know, absolutely nothing. There might be the petrol stations, but the petrol stations are all... There's one of them, maybe 3 or 4 different brands, and they're all identical. Wherever you are in Iceland, the petrol station looks identical. It serves the same hot dogs, the same coffee, the same everything. So after a while of riding in cold wind and rain and stopping in the identical petrol station environment, you can get bored of it. And I think I got a little bit tired after 2 or 3 weeks of being blown around on the bike and sitting in the same seat eating the same hot dog as I did the day before. Which is why I think to get the full immersive experience of Iceland, yes, you do need to stay in the various different types of hotel providers, because then you would get a more a wider flavour of Iceland, that you'd meet more people, more locals. Because the problem is, in all the gas stations around the Route 1, I think they're sick of tourists, and because all they do is meet tourists every day, and you're just another tourist, and there's no time for banter, there's no desire for banter. And I compare it to, say, when you go across America, when you might be the only tourist, certainly the only English tourist in somewhere like Texas, and therefore your interactions with people are very joyful, and you have a lot of communication, and you share stories as you go along, and that to me adds a lot of flavour to the trip. It's not just about the riding, it's about the people you meet, and I think that's where Iceland probably fell down for me, and I got a little bit tired of the riding. If it had been sunny all day long every day, maybe I would never have got tired of it. But even in summer, the weather can be very brutal. And when my wife flew out for a week, and we spent a week going around Iceland, and she hated it, simply because she was on the back of the bike, getting blown around by the wind, camping at night. You know, there's only so much joy you can find in that. So if I was to say who would Iceland most suit, I would say a group of people, of riders on similar bikes, who wish to travel in a similar way, who can break down the monotony of the weather by the camaraderie that they share. And so I think it would be a great place for 3 or 4 people to go and do the F-roads through the centre and do some river crossings. Get up here. I mean, this is where you get the isolation and the emptiness, which I think you associate Iceland with. This northeast corner and this northwest corner, the fjords. I had a great time in both these areas. Less so here and less so here. Through the middle, some of these roads are busy, the F26 and 35, but then there's lots of other F roads that are easy to find on the map. They're perfectly legal to ride, and most of them are manageable for a novice to intermediate level of off-road ability. In terms of bike choice, I don't think the GS1200 was the right bike. It was certainly the right bike for getting up to Denmark, but for some of the F roads, certainly on my own as I was, I think it was too heavy and too much bike to really feel confident exploring and pushing into further wilderness. Certainly the river crossings and things like that, when you've got a 300 kilo bike with all the gear on, I think you become very nervous, because if it topples over on you or you get stuck and there's nobody around, then you could get into trouble. Which is why for Iceland, I would say a 250 400cc trail bike, a KTM 690, a Himalayan, a CRF 250, a C90 even, you know, would be perfect, because the speed limit isn't high. The traffic is pretty slow going, but a lighter, more manageable bike would allow you to explore in a way that a bigger bike wouldn't. Equally, you could go to Iceland on a Harley or a sports bike, and just to stick to these tarmac roads or these roads that are these sort of ancillary roads that are really hard pack and perfectly manageable on any bike, really. Because there's a lot of road that's perfectly accessible, you know, on a sports bike. I think Iceland's pictured as some sort of rugged, rough terrain environment, but much of it isn't. Much of it is perfectly accessible by car and road-based motorcycle. In terms of paperwork for your own bike, you're really going to need a green card now at Brexit, which shouldn't be too difficult. Breakdown cover you will get from Voyager. They're the only ones who cover Iceland. And then health insurance. Navigator Travel is someone who I've always used and trust. There are some good local guides on the island. If you Google local guides, there will be something comes up, and they will be able to take you into the interior, into the roads that aren't marked on the map. What I would say is you can't off-road, and they're very tough and strict on off-roading. They don't want it. They don't want tyre tracks in the sort of terrain, and they had police waiting for you as you get off the ferry on the east side, and if they see a knobbly tyred bike, they'll stop you and give you, and tell you the rules and give you a piece of paper to explain no off-road riding. Some people take liberties through the centre, but you certainly won't want to get caught. So that's it, Iceland. You know, is it for everyone? I would say not. I think why I struggled with it a little bit was because I like a point-to-point adventure. I like the pursuit of an end destination, whether it's riding across America or Land's End to John O'Groats. I like having that singular destination because it focuses me and it makes the route options quite linear, which I quite like. I like the removal of options. Whereas when you go to Iceland and you land there, you know, really all you're doing is going in a circle to end up back where you finished, and there are lots of options along that route. And I probably got bogged down a little bit in deciding which way, where, when, how, why, and I probably missed that single pursuit. So dynamically, it didn't necessarily suit my way of travel. And I think that's important to point out. If you're happy to roam, I met Nick from Overland magazine, who was on the same ferry, and he was happy to roam, and he spent 3 weeks just roaming, slowly camping, got out here, rode back again, got the ferry home. And it perfectly suited his approach to travel and what he wanted out of a trip. Me, who likes the challenge of distance maybe, or destination, I was probably a little bit deflated by Iceland. And I think the weather, if you're trying to conquer miles every day or conquer distances, the daily grind of the weather can certainly go against you. But spectacular views. I've got fond memories of it. It's not difficult to ride Iceland. It's not overly difficult to get there. Contact Samskip or Imskip if you want to ship your bike there. Google ferry to Iceland and it will come up with the name of the ferry company. And it's not too difficult. Just book early because it is a popular destination now. A lot of people going on the ferry either on bike, mainly by car, or big camper vans, or the big 4x4 motorhomes that go out there. And try as much as you can to get out of this area here. Head up here. This was my favourite here. This was remote, good riding, and then I stumbled across an old herring factory that had got an art installation, And that to me was sort of that backwater of Iceland that I'd wanted to stumble across and maybe hadn't found on some of the other more populous areas of the island. So that's it, Iceland. If you conquered Europe and you want something different, give it a go. Cheers.